Question number 1, Mr. Andrew Mackay.
Number 1, sir.
This morning I had meetings with ministerial colleagues and others. In addition to my duties in this House, I shall be having further meetings later today. This evening I hope to have an audience of Her Majesty the Queen.
Mr. Mackay.
Could my right honourable friend confirm that there can be no ceasefire in the Gulf War until all relevant United Nations resolutions have been fully implemented? Until prisoners of war held in Iraq and Kuwaiti hostages held in Iraq have been released, and until all Iraqi troops have laid down their arms.
I entirely agree with my honourable friend, but unfortunately the conditions that he set out so succinctly this morning have not yet been set. As he will know, Saddam Hussein spoke again this morning, but without giving any indication whatsoever that Iraq will in fact comply with all the Security Council resolutions. Instead, this morning, he reiterated his untrue claim that Kuwait is part of Iraq and threatened implicitly to return. He must know that meeting the Security Council resolutions is an essential step, and he must publicly and explicitly do so. I would say also to the House that I do believe we are now in a new situation with the beginning of the ground war. Our first concern in this situation has to be with the safety and security of our forces. That does mean we require all Iraqi forces in the theatre of operations, those occupying and those supporting the occupation of Kuwait, to abandon their weapons, their equipment, and withdraw. And until they do so, they will be treated as hostile. Saddam Hussein started this war on his terms. He must end it on the terms set out by the United Nations.
Mr. Speaker, may I take this opportunity to strongly commend our forces for the bravery and professionalism that they're showing in the liberation of Kuwait. Does the Prime Minister share my view that Saddam Hussein could halt this war instantly if he personally announced his complete compliance with all relevant United Nations resolutions, and in addition, immediately released all prisoners of war and all of the civilians that he is holding against their will in both Kuwait and Iraq? And finally, Mr. Speaker, is it not clear that if Iraqi forces leave their military vehicles and lay down their arms, they will be safe from attack? Our forces will know that they too are safe from attack, and then all hostilities can end.
The right honourable gentleman is entirely right, and I agree with him without reservation. He will know that even this morning Saddam Hussein said, and I quote, for there's an implicit threat in what he said, "The gates of Constantinople were not open to Muslims at the first attempt. The clearest threat yet again he has to return. We have a duty and an obligation to remove that threat using all necessary means."
Dame Janet Fuchs.
As Saddam Hussein, like the devil, is the father of lies, would my right honourable friend ensure that all those in authority take not the slightest notice of what he says, but only of what he does?
I can certainly give my honourable friend that assurance. There have been a vast range of occasions over recent months where he has expressly told untruths, where at one stage his foreign minister has been negotiating on one tack and he has been speaking and acting on another. We simply cannot and do not trust him.
Betty Ashdown.
Does the Prime Minister agree that despite today's very welcome news, there is still much hard work and potentially costly work to be done before Kuwait is made secure? Does he realize that he is entirely right in saying that the safety of our troops and the long-term security of Kuwait do require that any Iraqi troops who wish to return home may do so in safety, but only after they have surrendered their weapons? And will he now say that if they do so, that once Kuwait is at last liberated, secure, and free from threat, then Desert Storm will end?
The right honourable gentleman is quite right. Those are the circumstances in which Desert Storm can end. And I believe he is right to emphasise yet again the safety and security of our troops. I frankly do not believe that either they or world public opinion would forgive us if at this stage of the conflict we permitted the Iraqis to withdraw with their weapons, perhaps at risk to our troops and perhaps at the risk of returning later.
Robert G. Hughes.
Number 2, sir.
I refer my honourable friend to the answer I gave some moments ago.
Mr. Hughes.
My right honourable friend confirmed that this government have established 12 regional technology centres to aid technology transfer. That under this government the number of science parks has increased from 2 to 39, with 22 more planned. And that the spending on civil research and development is higher as a percentage of GNP in this country than it is in Japan or the United States. And would my right honourable friend agree that calls for the establishment of such policies, when those policies are already in train and underway, merely demonstrates that those calling for them show muddle and ignorance in what they're doing? And isn't that what dominates Labour Party thinking?
Well, I cannot, Mr. Speaker, immediately imagine to what document my honourable friend is referring. But if perchance he is referring to the document on industrial and manufacturing matters released yesterday by the Labour Party, he is a little unkind to it. There were some good ideas in that document. Unfortunately, the good ideas are already being implemented and the bad ideas are being recycled.
Alan McKay.
Mr. Speaker, does the Prime Minister agree with the Secretary of State for Environment, who wants to do away with the poll tax, or his Minister of State for Environment, who is in record in the Ribble by-election, who wants to keep it?
As the honourable gentleman knows, the next Member of Parliament for the Ribble Valley, who I hope will soon be here on the Conservative benches, will be here in time to hear the result of our review of the community charge.
Douglas French.
Number 3, sir.
I refer my honourable friend to the answer I gave some moments ago.
Douglas French.
Mr. Speaker, does my right honourable friend agree that an industrial policy which is based on the creation of quangos, the creation of subsidies and inadequately costed tax breaks is, as the Financial Times put it this morning, a recipe for economic distortion?
Well, I do agree with my honourable friend, but again, I fear he's being too charitable. He's forgotten, for example, the reinvention of the son of the National Enterprise Board, an enterprise which took money away from viable businesses to pick winners. All of the winners, alas, went bust.
Mr. Alfred Morris.
What emphasis will the government put on reparations from Iraq, and to what extent will they be demanded? Moreover, what is the attitude of other governments in the coalition?
The attitude is set out in the Security Council resolutions. All governments in the coalition subscribe to those, and that remains the position.
Mr. Ian Taylor.
Number 4, sir.
I refer my honourable friend to the answer I gave some moments ago.
Ian Taylor.
This House has been powerfully united against the terrorism practiced by Saddam Hussein in Kuwait. Would not my right honourable friend agree that it's important that this House is also united against the evil acts of terrorism in this country and support all measures, including the Prevention of Terrorism Act? Would he have a word to encourage him to be more robust on this issue with the Leader of the Opposition?
No one doubts the commitment of the whole House to deal effectively with terrorism and not to give way to it. The widest possible support, in my judgment, for the Prevention of Terrorism Act would be a welcome event and would help to that end.
Mr. Ron Brown.
I know that the Prime Minister is occupied with...
Order. Ron, question number 5, please.
I refer the honourable gentleman to the answer I gave some moments ago.
Ron Brown.
Well, I know that the Prime Minister is obviously involved in many important duties. Only understand one thing: the real enemy is at home. The enemy is the capitalist system and the Tory government, because they are responsible for the problems of the British people. Can I say this also, that we have an example of the state-owned Finnish company wishing to take over the fertilizer business presently owned by ICI, but this is blocked. It's blocked because of blind party dogma of his government. Now, if you want investment in this country, isn't it unfair? Isn't it unfair on workers in this country who may lose their jobs? They may lose their jobs, particularly in Leith, because you have a subsidiary owned by ICI called SEI, Scottish Agricultural Industries. Now, isn't it wrong?
It's a occasion when I have to take lessons in dogma from the honourable gentleman.
Sir Hugh Rossi.
Number 7, sir.
I refer my honourable friend to the answer I gave some moments ago.
Rossi.
As a successful end is happily within reach to the hostilities in the Gulf, will my right honourable friend now ensure that the Allies will combat with the same vigour and single-mindedness of purpose the premeditated ecological vandalism perpetrated by Saddam Hussein, which places at risk the environment on a worldwide basis from acid deposition, accelerated global warming and desertification, as well as polluting and poisoning the waters of the Gulf?
My honourable friend is right and touches upon an important point. The UK has already made a substantial contribution to helping deal with the pollution caused by the Iraqis in recent weeks. But I'm sure my honourable friend is right. An international effort will be needed, and we will be part of that.
John Battle.
Number 8, sir.
I refer the honourable gentleman to the answer I gave some moments ago.
John Battle.
Since it's clear that some of his social security ministers want to continue the freeze on child benefit, and some do not, which ones will he be backing? And will he pledge now to make good the 4-year cut in child benefit, or will people have to rely on his one-off occasional piecemeal statements at the dispatch box for their basic benefits?
The honourable gentleman knows very well there are occasions when we make statements on public expenditure matters like child benefit, and this is not one of them.
Robert Dunn.
Mr. Speaker, when accounts are rendered for the Gulf War, will the Prime Minister seek to obtain an explanation as to the extraordinary behaviour of the Soviet Union in recent days? Will he make it quite plain to the Soviet government that they can either play ball with the West or with Iraq, but not with both?
I will have the opportunity of discussing all these matters with Mr. Gorbachev, early next week.
McCallion.
I refer the honourable gentleman to the answer I gave some moments ago.
Mr. Speaker, is the Prime Minister aware that hundreds of young Scots, half of them under 18, pass through London's night shelters every year, and that research has shown that on average these youngsters have less than £2 each in their possession? Why then does he continue to deny to the 16 and 17-year-olds amongst them the right to benefit? And is he really saying that the fate of these youngsters thrown onto the streets and vulnerable to drugs and prostitution is a matter of complete indifference to him and his government?
The honourable gentleman is entirely wrong, as he knows. Entirely wrong as he knows. We have provided unprecedented training opportunities for young people of that age, and there is no necessity whatsoever for any of them to be on the streets of London sleeping rough.
Number 10, sir.
I refer my honourable friend to the answer I gave some moments ago.
Does my right honourable friend agree that just as the world recognises the strength and discipline of our armed forces, so it should recognise the strength and discipline of our economy? Isn't our pound sterling as strong as Chobham armour?
I agree with my honourable friend. He will know there have been a remarkable series of events in recent months, and he will also know that sterling has remained remarkably stable despite all of them.
John Hume.
During his visit to Northern Ireland last week, did anyone raise with the Prime Minister
the security value of fixed military checkpoints. Did anyone point out that over the past 20 years, not a single thing of any security value has been found at such checkpoints, but that they have become, in effect, security risks, the targets of which are the young soldiers and policemen who man them? Are you giving any thought to reviewing the use of such checkpoints?
I discussed a raft of security matters in the meetings I had in Northern Ireland last week, but I think the honourable gentleman would know it would be unwise to discuss what they were.
Private notice question, Mr. Gerald Kaufman.